Okay, let's reproduce the fixture first, and then we'll try to find the vector. The idea is we have a vector that's sitting on here like this called D. And we have another vector out here like this, and they're calling that U. And we want to draw two vectors, one of which is parallel to D, and one of those is perpendicular to D. This one they call D parallel. This one they call dPerp. The easy one to find is D parallel, so we're going to do that first. All I want is a vector that's perpendicular to D that's this long. Well, we know how long that length is. That's the projection of U onto D. So the length of this is just going to be U dot D over length of D, like that. So that's how long that vector should be, but that doesn't give us the vector. So this is what we do. We start out with D, like that. We turn it into a unit vector by dividing by its length. By its length. There, better. Now what do we want? This is the right vector. It's a unit vector. This is the length I want. So that's actually just a number. So when I take this number and multiply by this vector, what we're going to get is a vector of the right direction, because this is the direction, and it's got the right length because that's the length. We're not going to leave it looking like this. We can make it actually look a lot prettier. So what we have is U dot D over the length of D squared, like this, times D, right? So I can't put a time, but I just have to put something like that. And if you find that's too hard to remember, we can actually rewrite this just a little bit. That makes it a little more complicated, but makes it easier to remember. The top is just U dot D. The bottom is D dot D. And that's a scalar times the vector D. And that gives us D parallel. Now, you might think we're going to try to do something hard to find dPerp. We're not. We're going to remember our linear algebra. We know that dPerp plus D parallel is U, right? So let's just put this little conclusion here. Put the conclusion in maybe an orange box, just to set it up a little bit differently. We want dPerp without working. What we want, right, is U, which is usually a given vector, minus D parallel, which we just found, right? So we have a formula for D parallel. We can find dPerp just by taking U and subtracting D parallel. One of the assignment's activities is to show that this actually is perpendicular to D. It is, and it's not that bad.